Captain Hanul Kim stood at the window of the human base camp and watched the alien city in the distance. The tall crystal towers of the Velnari stretched into the purple sky like giant fingers. 3 months had passed since humans first landed on this planet. 3 months of careful talks and tense meetings. 3 months of trying to understand these strange beings who could read minds and towered over humans like giants. Hanul rubbed his tired eyes. The negotiations were not going well. Every meeting felt like walking on thin ice. The Velnari were proud and powerful. Their empire controlled dozens of star systems. They had technology that humans could only dream of, but they also had rules that seemed impossible to understand. "Captain Kim?" A voice called from behind him. Dr. Mira Seo entered the room carrying a datapad. Her face looked worried. "We just received a message from the palace." Hanul turned around. Mira was the best alien expert they had. If she looked worried, it meant trouble. "What kind of message?" "Queen Ashara Velthane wants to meet with you." "Alone." Mira set the datapad on the table. "She's requesting a private audience, no guards, no advisors, just you and her." Commander Tai-Ho Park walked into the room at that moment. He was the head of security for the human team. His job was to keep everyone safe. "Did I hear that right? The alien queen wants a private meeting?" Hanul picked up the datapad and read the message. The words were formal and cold, like all Velnari communications, but something about this felt different. "Has this ever happened before? A private meeting with their queen?" Mira shook her head. "Never. Not with any species they've contacted. The Velnari always meet in groups. They have strict rules about protocol and hierarchy. A private meeting breaks all their customs." Tai-Ho frowned. "It sounds like a trap. Why would she suddenly want to meet alone? What if they're planning to capture you or worse?" "I don't think it's a trap," Mira said slowly, "but I don't understand why either. The Velnari are telepaths. They communicate with their minds most of the time. They don't trust species who can't do the same. They think we're deaf and blind because we can't read thoughts." Hanul read the message again. The meeting was set for tomorrow evening at the Queen's personal tent. Not the palace, not the formal meeting hall. A tent. "What do you know about their tents?" "The royal tent is where the Queen goes to think and rest. It's her private space. No one enters without special permission. Even her closest advisors rarely go inside." Mira looked at the message again. "This is very strange." The next day passed slowly. Hanul spent hours preparing for the meeting. He studied everything they knew about Velnari culture. He practiced the proper greetings and gestures. He chose his clothes carefully, simple but respectful. As the sun began to set, Hanul made his way to the alien city. The Velnari guards at the gate watched him with their large, crystal-like eyes. They said nothing but allowed him to pass. Their silence felt heavy and threatening. The royal tent stood in the center of a large courtyard. It was massive, made of shimmering fabric that seemed to change colors in the light. Beautiful patterns were woven into the material. Strange symbols glowed softly along the edges. As Hanul approached the tent, he noticed something odd. Elite guards normally surrounded the queen at all times. These warriors were the best of the best, chosen to protect the royal family with their lives. But as he walked closer, he saw the guards walking away. One by one, they left their positions. They moved in perfect formation, their heavy armor making no sound. None of them looked back. None of them spoke. They simply walked away into the growing darkness. Hanul stopped walking. His heart began to beat faster. This was not normal. Something important was happening, but he didn't understand what. A soft sound came from inside the tent. "Enter, Captain Kim." The voice was female and spoke perfect English. But it didn't sound cold or formal like other Velnari voices. It sounded tired. Hanul took a deep breath and pushed aside the tent flap. Inside, the tent was beautiful beyond anything he had ever seen. Soft lights floated in the air without any visible source. The walls were covered with tapestries that told stories of ancient battles and distant worlds. The floor was covered with thick carpets that felt soft under his feet. But what surprised him most was the queen herself. Queen Ashara Velthane sat, Not on a throne or royal chair, but on simple cushions on the floor. She had removed her ceremonial armor and wore plain robes. Without the armor, she looked less frightening but somehow more impressive. The queen was still huge by human standards, at least 8 feet tall even sitting down. Her skin had a crystal-like quality that reflected the floating lights. Her eyes were large and completely black like deep pools. But there was something in those eyes that Hanul had never seen in a Velnari before. Sadness. Please sit. The queen gestured to cushions across from her. I hope the cushions are comfortable for your kind. I studied human customs before this meeting. Hanul sat down carefully. Your Majesty, I am honored by this meeting. But I must admit, I don't understand why you sent away your guards. The queen was quiet for a long moment. In my culture, Captain Kim, guards represent protection from enemies. By sending them away, I show that I do not consider you an enemy. More than that, I show trust. Trust? Yes. To dismiss one's protection is to show vulnerability. It is the greatest sign of respect we can offer. The queen reached for a pot that sat on a small table between them. I learned that humans drink tea when they wish to talk seriously. I hope I prepared it correctly. Hanul watched in amazement as the powerful alien queen poured tea for him with her own hands. No servant, no ceremony, just one being serving another. Thank you, Your Majesty, but may I ask why you wanted this meeting? The queen poured tea for herself as well. Her large hands handled the small cup with surprising gentleness. Because, Captain Kim, my people are dying, and I believe only humans can help us understand how to live. The words hung in the air between them. Hanul felt the weight of them settle on his shoulders. Whatever he had expected from this meeting, it was not this. Hanul stared at the queen across the small table. The tea in his hands was warm and had a strange but pleasant taste. He had expected many things from this meeting, but not this quiet confession. Your people are dying. I don't understand. Queen, Ashara set down her teacup. Her movements were slow and careful, like someone carrying a great weight. Captain Kim, what do you know about how my people communicate? You're telepaths. You can read thoughts and share ideas directly from mind to mind. Hanul had studied this basic fact many times. Yes, for thousands of years we have lived this way. We share thoughts, feelings, and knowledge instantly across great distances. Our entire society is built on this connection. Our government, our military, our families, everything depends on the telepathic bond between us. The queen stood up and walked to the edge of the tent. Through the fabric walls, the lights of the alien city twinkled like stars. 3 years ago, something began to happen. Our people started losing their telepathic abilities. At first, it was just a few individuals on distant worlds. We thought it was a minor illness that would pass. But it didn't pass? No. It spread. Slowly at first, then faster. Entire colonies have lost their ability to communicate as they always have. They can no longer share the deep connection that makes us who we are. The queen's voice grew quieter. They are becoming isolated, alone in their own minds. Hanul tried to imagine what that would be like. For humans, being alone in their thoughts was normal. But for a species that had shared mental connections, for thousands of years it must feel like going blind and deaf at the same time. The worst part, the queen continued, is that it's affecting our young people first. The next generation of Velnari are growing up without the gift that has defined our species since the beginning. They cannot connect to the great network of minds that has guided us for so long. What do your scientists say? Have they found a cause? Queen Ashara returned to her cushions. Our best minds are working on the problem, but they approach it as they approach everything, through the shared knowledge of many minds working as one. When that method fails, they have no other way to think about the problem. And that's where humans come in? Yes. The queen looked directly at Hanul with those deep black eyes. I have been watching your species since you arrived. Your people are strange to us. You have no telepathic abilities. You cannot share thoughts directly. Yet somehow you work together. You solve problems. You adapt to new situations in ways that amaze us. Haniel sipped his tea and thought about this. We've had to learn different ways to communicate and cooperate. We use words, body, language, art, music. We've had to develop trust and understanding without being able to read each other's minds. Exactly. Your people have skills that we never needed to develop. But now, as our telepathic abilities fade, we need to learn what you already know. The Queen paused. The problem is that my people see your ways as weakness. They believe that any species without telepathy is inferior. But you don't think that? I have studied your history, Captain Kim. I have learned about your wars and your peace. I have seen how your people can disagree strongly, but still work together when needed. I have watched how you care for those who are different or weak. These are not the actions of an inferior species. The Queen reached into her robes and pulled out a small device. She set it on the table between them. This contains reports from our affected worlds. The colonies that have lost their telepathic abilities are struggling. Some have fallen into chaos. Others have simply stopped communicating with the rest of the Empire. Hanul picked up the device. You want me to look at these reports? I want you to help me understand them. My advisors see only failure and weakness in these reports. But I wonder if you might see something different, something we are missing, because we have never had to live as you do. As Hanul activated the device, images and text appeared in the air above it. He saw alien cities with empty streets. He read reports of Velnari who could no longer perform their jobs because those jobs required telepathic communication. He saw families struggling to connect with their children who had grown up without the telepathic gift. This is terrible, Hanil said softly. But I also see something else. What do you see? I see people trying to adapt. Look at this report from the Velkara colony. They've started using spoken language more. They're developing new forms of art and music. They're finding other ways to connect with each other. The Queen leaned forward. My advisors call this degeneration. They say these colonies are losing their culture and becoming like primitive species. But what if they're not losing their culture? What if they're growing it? What if they're becoming something new? Hanul looked up from the device. Your Majesty, can I ask you a personal question? Yes. How do you feel when you suppress your telepathic abilities like you're doing now? The Queen was quiet for a long moment. Lonely, she said finally. But also free. When I cannot hear the thoughts of others, I can focus on my own thoughts more clearly. I can think about problems without the influence of the shared mind. And that frightens you? It terrifies me. But it also gives me ideas that I never had before, thoughts that are completely my own. The Queen looked at her hands. Sometimes I wonder if what we call a plague might actually be evolution. Maybe my people are meant to grow beyond pure telepathy. Hanul set down the device. Your Majesty, may I suggest something? Please, instead of trying to cure this condition, what if we tried to help your people adapt to it? What if we taught them the skills humans use to communicate and work together without telepathy? The Queen's eyes widened. You would do this? You would help us learn to live like humans? We would help you learn to live like yourselves, but with new abilities added to your old ones. You don't have to lose what makes you Velnari. You can just become more than you were before. For the first time since Hanul had entered the tent, Queen Ashara smiled. It was a strange expression on her alien features, but it was unmistakably a smile. Captain Kim, I believe this conversation will change the future of both our species. Outside the tent, the night sounds of the alien world continued. But inside, two very different beings had found the beginning of understanding, and, perhaps the beginning of hope. Hours had passed since Hanul entered the Queen's tent. The floating lights had dimmed to a soft glow, and the alien city had grown quiet outside. But inside the tent, the conversation continued. Queen Ashara had moved from her formal sitting, positioned to a more relaxed pose, leaning against the soft cushions. This would have shocked any Velnari who saw it. Their queen never showed such casual behavior, especially in front of outsiders. "Tell me more about human leadership," the queen said. "In our society, the strong rule over the weak. Power flows from the top down. But I have observed that humans sometimes follow leaders who are not the strongest or most intelligent." Hanul thought about this question. "We do things differently. Sometimes the best leaders are those who serve others, not those who command them. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the Korean War. She said the officers who survived were not always the toughest ones, but the ones who took care of their soldiers." "This makes no sense to me," the queen said, but she leaned forward with interest. "If a leader is weak, why would anyone follow them?" She wasn't weak. She was strong in a different way. She could see when her people were afraid or tired or hungry. She would share her food with them. She would listen to their problems. When they felt cared for, they fought harder for her than they would for a leader who only gave orders. Queen Ashara was quiet for a moment. "In our empire, showing such care would be seen as weakness. A leader who shares resources with subordinates would lose respect. But what if caring for others is actually a kind of strength? What if people work better when they feel valued?" Hanul paused. "Your Majesty, may I ask how you became queen?" "I was born to rule. The telepathic network recognized my strong mind when I was young. I was trained from birth to command the thoughts of others and to make decisions for millions of people." "That sounds lonely." The queen looked surprised. "Lonely? I am connected to every mind in the empire. How could I be lonely?" "But are you ever just Ashara? Not the queen, not the ruler, just yourself?" Hanul asked gently. "When you make decisions, do you get to consider what you personally want? Or do you always have to think about what's best for the empire?" For the first time, the queen looked truly confused. I don't understand the question. I am the empire. My wants and the empire's needs are the same thing. Are they really? Right now, sitting here with me, what do you want? Not what the empire needs, but what you personally want." Queen Ashara stared at him for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was very quiet. "I want to stop being afraid. I want to stop feeling like I carry the weight of billions of lives on my shoulders every moment of every day. I want to have one conversation where I don't have to be perfect." "You just did," Hanul said softly. The queen's eyes widened as she realized what she had said. This is wrong. A ruler should not have such thoughts. The empire depends on my strength. The empire depends on your wisdom. And wisdom comes from understanding yourself as well as others." Hanul leaned forward. "Your Majesty, you invited me here because your people are changing. Maybe you need to change with them." Before the queen could respond, a soft chime sounded from a communication device near the tent entrance. The queen's entire posture changed instantly. She became formal and rigid again. "Urgent message from the High Council," she said, reading the device. Her face grew pale. 3 more colonies have lost telepathic contact completely. The Council is demanding immediate military action against the Zephyrian Federation. They believe the Zephyrians are responsible for the plague. Are they? No. The Zephyrians are peaceful traders. They have no reason to attack us, and no ability to create such a plague. But my council needs someone to blame." The queen stood up and began pacing. "They want to show strength by attacking a weaker species." Hanul watched as the queen struggled with this news. He could see the leader and the person fighting inside her. "What do you want to do?" "I want to refuse their demands. I want to focus on helping our affected colonies instead of starting a useless war. But if I show such weakness, the council might remove me from power. Then don't show weakness, show strength." "How?" Hanul stood up as well. "By doing something that has never been done before. By showing them a different kind of leadership." The queen stopped pacing. "What are you suggesting?" "Take me to your council meeting. Let me stand with you as an equal advisor. Show them that working with other species is not weakness but strength." "That's impossible. No non-Velnari has ever been granted such status. It would break every protocol we have." Good. Your protocols aren't working anymore. You're telepathic. Society is changing whether you want it or not. You can either change with it or be destroyed by trying to hold on to the old ways. The Queen stared at him. You're asking me to risk everything. If the Council rejects this, I could lose my throne. My people could fall into civil war. And if you don't take this risk, your people will start a war with innocent species and continue to ignore the real problems they face. Hanil moved closer to her. Your Majesty, you said you wanted to stop being afraid. This is your chance. Queen Ashara closed her eyes and was silent for several minutes. When she opened them again, she looked different, more determined, more alive. Very well, Captain Kim. But understand this. If we do this, there is no going back. You will become the first alien advisor in Velnari history. Both our species will be changed by this decision. I understand. The Council meets at dawn. Until then, you will stay here as my guest. I will have food brought for you and sleeping arrangements prepared. As if summoned by her words, a Velnari servant appeared at the tent entrance. The Queen spoke to him in their own language, giving him instructions. The servant's eyes grew wide with shock as he looked at Hanul, but he bowed and left to carry out his orders. What did you tell him? Hanul asked. I told him to prepare quarters for my new advisor. By morning, word will spread throughout the palace. There will be no hiding what we are about to do. Hanul felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. In a few hours, he would stand before the most powerful aliens humanity had ever encountered and ask them to trust his species with their future. Your Majesty, I hope I can live up to your faith in me. Queen Ashara smiled again, and this time, it looked more natural on her face. Captain Kim, you have already shown me something I thought was impossible. You have shown me that strength and vulnerability can exist in the same person. Tomorrow, we will show my people the same thing. The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace courtyard as Hanul walked beside Queen Ashara toward the council chamber. He had barely slept, spending the night thinking about what lay ahead. The Queen had provided him with formal robes that marked him as an advisor, but they felt strange and heavy on his shoulders. Remember, the Queen said quietly as they approached the massive doors, the Council will try to test you. They will use their telepathic abilities to sense your emotions and fears. Do not try to hide them. Simply be yourself. The doors opened to reveal the largest room Hanul had ever seen. The council chamber was a vast amphitheater carved from black stone. Hundreds of Velnari council members sat in curved rows that rose up toward the ceiling. At the center was a raised platform where the Queen would normally stand alone. As they entered, the chamber fell silent. Every pair of large, dark eyes turned to stare at the small human walking beside their Queen. Hanil felt the weight of their attention like a physical force. He could sense their telepathic probes touching his mind, trying to read his thoughts and emotions. Queen Ashara led him to the center platform. Council members, she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I present Captain Hanul Kim of the human species. I have appointed him as my advisor in matters concerning the current crisis affecting our people. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, as if a dam had broken, the chamber erupted in angry voices. Council members leaped to their feet, shouting in their own language. The sound was overwhelming. One voice rose above the others. A massive Velnari with scars across his crystal-like skin stood in the front row. Queen Ashara, this breaks every law and tradition we have. No alien has ever been granted such status. This creature cannot even speak with the true voice. General, Korth Veldane speaks truth. Another council member called out. How can we trust decisions made with the council of a mind-deaf species? They cannot understand our ways. Queen Ashara raised her hand for silence, but the shouting continued. Hanul could see that she was losing control of the situation. This was the moment that would determine everything. Hanul stepped forward. May I speak? The chamber fell silent again, but this time the silence felt dangerous. General Korth Veldane's eyes glowed with anger. The alien dares to address this council directly? This is beyond insult. You're right, Hanul said calmly. I am alien to you. I cannot read your thoughts or share your telepathic connection. I know nothing about your laws and traditions. I am probably the least qualified person in this room to advise your queen. The general looked confused by this admission. The other council members began to murmur among themselves. But, Hanel continued, that might be exactly why you need me. Your queen told me about the crisis your people face. You are losing your telepathic abilities. Your colonies are struggling to adapt. Your young people are growing up different from their parents. And your response to this crisis has been to look for enemies to blame and wars to fight. General Korth Veldane stepped down from his seat and walked toward the platform. You dare to criticize our methods, alien? No, General. I'm trying to understand them. You see this crisis as an attack to be defeated. But what if it's not an attack? What if it's change that needs to be adapted to? Change? The general's voice was full of disgust. You speak of abandoning everything that makes us Velnari. I speak of becoming more than you were before. Hanel looked around the chamber. My species has no telepathic abilities. We have never had the advantages you were born with. But we have survived wars, disasters, plagues, and countless other challenges. How do you think we did that? Through primitive violence and crude technology, another council member called out. Through cooperation, Hanul said. Through learning to work with people who disagree with us. Through finding strength in our differences instead of seeing them as weaknesses. General Korth Veldane had reached the platform now. He towered over Hanul, his massive form radiating menace. You speak of cooperation, yet your species has countless wars in its history. Do not lecture us about peace, human. You're absolutely right. We have fought many wars. We have made terrible mistakes. We have hurt each other in ways that shame us. Hanul met the general's gaze without flinching. But we learned from those mistakes. We learned that working together was better than fighting alone. Pretty words, from a weak species. General Korth Veldane, Hanul said, I have a question for you. You've served your queen and your people for many years, haven't you? The general looked surprised by the change of topic. I have served with honor for over a century, and in all that time you must have learned much about combat and strategy and protecting those you care about. Of course. Would you teach me about Velnari combat traditions? I'm genuinely curious about how your people approach warfare and defense. The chamber fell completely silent. This was not what anyone had expected. General Korth Veldane stared at Hanul with confusion. You want me to teach you? Yes, I want to understand how your people think about strength and protection. I want to learn from your experience and wisdom. The general's aggressive posture began to soften. You truly wish to learn about our martial traditions? I do. And, in return, perhaps I could share some human approaches to the same problems. Not to replace your methods, but to add to them. Something remarkable happened then. General Korth Veldane began to speak about Velnari combat philosophy. He explained how their telepathic abilities allowed perfect coordination between warriors. He described the honor codes that governed their military. As he spoke, his anger faded, replaced by the pride of a teacher sharing knowledge with a student. Other council members began to listen with interest. Some started asking questions about human military tactics. The hostile atmosphere in the chamber was changing into something more like a classroom. This is what I mean, Hanul said when the general finished his explanation. Instead of seeing our differences as threats, we can see them as opportunities to learn. Your telepathic coordination is amazing, but what happens when that ability is compromised? Human tactics might provide backup methods that could help. Queen Ashara stepped forward. The captain speaks wisdom. Our current crisis requires new thinking. We cannot solve tomorrow's problems with yesterday's solutions. But, Your Majesty, another council member said, how can we trust the judgment of a species so different from us? Because, the Queen replied, that difference is exactly what we need. Captain Kim has shown us something in just a few minutes that we had not considered in months of debate. He turned a confrontation into a conversation. He turned an enemy into a teacher. These are skills our people need to learn. General Korth Veldane nodded slowly. The human speaks strangely, but his words have merit. Perhaps there is wisdom in considering new approaches to old problems. Queen Ashara looked around the chamber. I propose that we establish a new form of council, one that includes voices from outside our traditional hierarchy, one that can consider solutions we might not think of ourselves. The debate that followed was intense but no longer hostile. Council members argued about the proposal, but they were listening to each other instead of simply shouting. Hanel watched as centuries of rigid tradition began to bend under the pressure of necessity. Finally, after hours of discussion, the council voted. It was close, but the proposal passed. For the first time in Velnari history, their government would include non-Velnari advisors. As the session ended, General Korth Veldane approached Hanul. Captain Kim, I still do not fully trust your species, but you have shown respect for our traditions while sharing your own ideas. This gives me hope that we might learn from each other. Thank you, General. I hope we can continue our conversation about military traditions. I have much to learn from you. The general smiled, an expression that looked fierce on his scarred features but was clearly meant to be friendly. And I find myself curious about these human tactics you mentioned. Perhaps we can exchange knowledge. As they left the chamber, Queen Ashara walked beside Hanel with visible relief. You did something I thought was impossible, Captain. You turned the most traditional members of my council into advocates for change. I didn't change their minds, Your Majesty. I just showed them that learning from others doesn't mean abandoning who you are. It means becoming more than you were before. And that, the Queen said, is a lesson my people desperately need to learn. 6 weeks had passed since the historic council meeting. The royal palace had become a different place. Where once only Velnari voices were heard in the halls of power, now humans worked alongside the alien leaders. The change was not easy, but it was happening. Hanul stood in what used to be called the strategy chamber but was now simply known as the circle room. The formal table had been replaced with comfortable seating arranged in a circle. Queen Ashara sat next to General Korth Veldane, who was deep in conversation with Commander Teho Park about defensive strategies. Dr. Mira Seo was showing a group of Velnari scientists data about the colonies that had lost their telepathic abilities. The latest reports are encouraging, Dr. Mira said, pointing to charts floating in the air above them. The Velkara colony has not only stabilized, but is actually growing. They've developed new forms of art and music. Their productivity has increased by 20%. A Velnari scientist named Kira Velseth looked puzzled. But how is this possible? They have lost the gift that makes us who we are. Maybe they haven't lost anything, Hanul suggested. Maybe they've gained something new, the ability to think as individuals while still working as a community. Queen Ashara nodded. Captain Kim is right. I have been watching the reports from all our affected colonies. Those that have embraced change are thriving. Those that continue to resist it are struggling. Your Majesty, General Korth Veldane said, I must admit that I was wrong about human methods. The mixed species defense teams we've created are more effective than pure Velnari units. When telepathy fails, having people trained in verbal communication saves lives. And the human emotional support techniques are helping our young people, added another council member. The ones born without telepathic abilities no longer feel broken or worthless. They're learning to see their differences as gifts. Dr. Mira activated another display. We've also made a breakthrough in understanding the biological changes. It's not a plague at all. It's evolution. Your species is developing stronger individual consciousness. You're not losing your telepathic abilities. You're gaining the ability to choose when to use them. The room fell silent as the implications of this discovery sank in. Queen Ashara was the first to speak. You mean our people aren't sick? They're changing, growing, becoming something new. Dr. Mira smiled. In a few generations, your people might have the best of both worlds. The telepathic connection when they want it and individual thought when they need it. Kira Velseth leaned forward with excitement. This would give us abilities no species has ever had. We could maintain our cultural bonds while also developing the problem-solving skills humans possess. But this means everything we've been trying to do, the medical treatments, the attempts to restore full telepathic function, has been making the problem worse, another scientist said. Not worse, Hanul corrected. Just different than expected. You've been trying to cure something that didn't need curing. Instead, you needed to learn how to adapt to it. General Korth Veldane stood up and walked to the large window that looked out over the city. I can see the changes even, here in the capital. Young Velnari are creating new forms of art. They're asking questions their parents never thought to ask. They're finding solutions to problems in ways that surprise their elders. And that frightens some people, Queen Ashara said softly. Change is always frightening, even when it's good change. Your Majesty, Hanul said, may I share something my grandmother once told me? Please. She said that a tree that cannot bend in the wind will break in the storm, but a tree that learns to bend can survive any weather and grow stronger because of it. The Queen smiled. Your grandmother was wise, and she would be proud to know that her words are helping shape the future of two species. A soft chime indicated that someone was requesting entry to the chamber. A young Velnari entered, one of the Queen's personal assistants. Your Majesty, we have received communications from several other species. They wish to establish diplomatic contact with both the Velnari Empire and humanity. Other species? Commander Teho Park looked up with interest. Which ones? The Andrian Collective, the Free Worlds of Soltara, and the Crystalline Hegemony. They all mention being impressed by the cooperation they have observed between our peoples. Queen Ashara exchanged glances with Hanul. It seems word of our alliance has spread. What do they want? Dr. Mira asked. The assistant consulted his notes. They face various challenges: resource disputes, technological problems, social changes. They wish to learn about human Velnari cooperation methods. Hanul felt a sense of wonder at how quickly things were changing. 6 months ago, humanity had met only one alien species. Now we might become teachers and diplomats to half the galaxy. Not just humans, Queen Ashara corrected. We will face these new challenges together. The Velnari have much to offer other species as well. Our technology, our long experience with interstellar civilization, our new understanding of adaptation and change. General Korth Veldane returned to his seat. I suggest we respond positively to these diplomatic requests, but we should meet with each species as a united human Velnari delegation. Let them see from the beginning that cooperation between different peoples is possible. Agreed, the Queen said. Captain Kim, will you serve as co-leader of these diplomatic missions? I would be honored, Your Majesty. Over the following days, preparations began for the new diplomatic initiatives. The palace became even busier as humans and Velnari worked together to plan for meetings with species neither had encountered before. One evening, as the preparations neared completion, Hanul found himself once again in Queen Ashara's tent. But this time he was not alone with her. Several human and Velnari advisors sat in the same circle where his first private meeting with the Queen had taken place. It's hard to believe how much has changed, Dr. Mira said, looking around the tent. 6 weeks ago, this tent was a place of secrets and isolation. Now it's become a symbol of openness and cooperation. The tent hasn't changed, Queen Ashara said with a smile. But what it represents has grown. It was once a place where I came to be alone with my burdens. Now it's a place where those burdens are shared by friends. General Korth Veldane, who had become an unlikely ally in the transformation, raised his cup of tea. To Captain Kim, who showed us that strength comes not from standing alone but from standing together. To Queen Ashara, Hanul replied, who had the courage to trust a stranger and change the course of history. To all of us, Commander Teho Park added, who learned that differences don't have to divide us. As they shared the toast, a message arrived on the communication system. It was from one of the distant colonies that had been most affected by the loss of telepathic abilities. Queen Ashara read the message aloud. Your Majesty, we wish to report that our colony has not only recovered, but is prospering beyond our greatest hopes. We have learned to combine the best of our old ways with new methods learned from human advisors. Our children, both those with telepathic gifts and those without, work together in ways we never imagined possible. We are no longer the same people we were, but we are not less than we were. We are more. Thank you for showing us that change can be a gift rather than a curse. The tent fell silent as everyone absorbed the meaning of these words. Finally, Queen Ashara spoke. 6 months ago, I thought my people were dying. I thought we were losing everything that made us who we are. I was wrong on both counts. We weren't dying. We were being born. And we weren't losing ourselves. We were discovering who we could become. And this is just the beginning, Hanul added. Tomorrow we meet with new species who have their own challenges and their own gifts. Each time we reach out to others, each time we learn from differences instead of fearing them, we all become more than we were. Queen Ashara looked around the war circle at the faces of humans and Velnari who had become friends and colleagues. Captain Kim, when I first invited you into this tent, I sent away my guards because I wanted to show trust. Tonight I realize I don't need to send them away anymore. Why is that, Your Majesty? Because everyone in this tent is now my guard. Not guards who protect me from enemies, but guards who protect the future we're building together. Outside, the tent, the lights of 2 civilizations, human and Velnari, twinkled together in the alien night. Inside the tent, representatives of those civilizations planned for a future where cooperation and understanding would spread across the stars. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place.